office requires. And then there's burnout because there's only one pastor and he can't be everywhere, or he's too tired to go everywhere because he's 85 years old and there's not other men in the congregation stepping up. Or, it's just, you see it all the time. And or how about vocational pastors, guys who are working 50 hours a week and they're struggling because the plurality just isn't expansive enough. I guess there's a bunch of different reasons, but I hear what you're saying. It's a problem, and it seems like a big problem in the Western church.
So what's the new covenant answer?
The new covenant answer is to, if you're not in a house church, to make the local church feel like a house church.
Right. Right. The problem is, how can you do that with 300 people?
That's more? I would say that's too big. That's my opinion. I can't see how the elders can watch over a flock of 300 people if there's even 10 of them. Say there's 10 elders, right? How are they going to be that involved in the lives of 300 people? It just, I don't know.
And that's why churches like John MacArthur's church, Grace Community Church, that's why they break up into their grace. I forgot what they call them. I don't know, grace fellowships or something. Mm-hmm. Like they're basically smaller churches, within that one church that each have at least one elder overseeing it.
So you're saying his own church in California is split into sub churches?
Yes, they're basically sub churches. Yeah, they have their main service, and then they split up into their smaller groups.
Oh, I see. Like, maybe in the evening, they have an evening service where they got their own.
I don't know exactly how they do it. I don't know whether it's all in the morning or whether it's. Yeah, I'm not sure, but they do split up because obviously it's the congregation is. It's probably, thousands of people, not just hundreds.
Right.
Yeah. I'm with you guys in saying I'm not comfortable with that huge congregation.
I'm sorry. What were you going to say?
No, I don't see in scripture. I don't see how it can be practical, as Curtis pointed out. Mm-hmm. And I've seen too many instances of it. And the pastor is like an executive often in a company. Yep. And the further you stray away from the new covenant humility of a new covenant leader, the more you become like a secular model of leadership and a company and whatever else.
Yeah.
I have a problem with that. I have a real problem with a pastor making millions from the gospel in his books. I have a real problem with that. I have a problem with a pastor making lots and lots of money from being a pastor.
Right.
I find that hard to square with the scriptural model. Mm-hmm. And I know it's true that we cannot replicate Jesus' exact way of doing things, or the Apostle Paul's, or whoever else. But surely it's a case then you get as close to it as you can, right? Mm-hmm. Given your limitations. Natural change in cultures and all that stuff. Okay, fair enough. So I'd like to see a pastor, elder, who is just there to share the word of God and is there to feed the flock and he'll witness, and you don't get the feeling he's a professional. You don't get the feeling that he's there to build up a ministry. Sometimes I feel like screaming when I hear that. This is my ministry. And I go, oh my goodness, just preach the word. brother, just preach it. Feed the flock. I don't care what your ministry is. My ministry is this, my ministry is that. Everybody's got a ministry nowadays. Man, just get a Bible and go and preach and teach the flock. You're a shepherd.
That's another point I think you're making, that like these guys, I think seminary is great to a certain degree. They're trained, they're professionals, but I mean, look, study to show yourself approved. Of course, I get that, but they're coming at it at an angle where, like, you got to be a professional. It's like, can't you just get some real good brothers together who have a pretty decent understanding of the word,
Right.
who are qualified, and just let them go, let them serve, let them run, let it naturally,
Amen.
spirit-led naturally take place,
Amen.
Mm-hmm.
That's the way, I think that's the way it's got to be. It certainly compares better to the New Testament, right, than the executive model or the model of someone running a small business, because that's essentially what a pastor is. That you can't really get to know him. You've got to make appointments and all the rest of it. I mean, I do that for my doctor.
Yep.
Can you imagine feeling, I mean, I don't know if you guys ever served in any of those roles, but imagine you were getting paid a certain salary, and I know this is biblical to get paid if you're serving. I would imagine to a certain degree. You wouldn't want to crush a congregation, but could you imagine the pressure that might add to your position as just being somebody who's supposed to watch over the souls? That, I mean, I almost feels like I would want to take that off me. Like, you know what I mean? I wouldn't want anything there.
What specifically would you want to take off of you?
Say, for instance, the salary. Like, I always kind of lean towards vocational guys, like guys working and then serving at the same time.
Bivocational.
Bivocational, yes. I'm sorry. So, the pressure of getting a salary, having to perform according to this salary, it just doesn't make sense to me spiritual wise. I don't know.
No, it doesn't. It doesn't. And by extension, the same principle, it doesn't make sense the way we evangelicalism has set up the whole missionary movement, where you've got to go through you've got to jump through so many hoops, raise so much money. You've got to get this, that, the next thing. I mean, it's ridiculous. Whereas I remember, if you maybe you've read about William Carey and other missionaries, they saved up money, they got on a boat, and off they sailed.
Right.
They were ready to die.
Mm-hmm.
That was it, plain and simple. But no, you cannot. If you want to go abroad to one of these countries to be a missionary, your church is demanding that you go through all these missionary societies. And again, I don't get it. I maybe they're helpful to some degree, but I cannot help but feel the church has lost its way in terms of the eldership, missionaries, and especially witnessing. Where are these? Where are the local pastors? Where are they? What are they doing? Studying all the time, going to their conferences. Get out in the streets and share Christ.
Oh, amen, brother. I think a lot of times these, like, kind of like the pastors you were describing earlier, it's a place to hide sometimes behind the pulpit, because the real world is scary. Sharing Christ with people can be tough, you know?
And yet you're doing it, Christopher's doing it, and I'm doing it every day in a job.
Right.
But I find most of these pastors are not doing it.
Even though,
Curtis, you mentioned about different reasons for that set of affairs. I can tell you definitely one reason that I have seen again with my own eyes is that too many churches in this area, they don't have a proper handle on the Word of God, the pastors. They really don't. And that means then that their priorities are all upside down, back to front. This is evident to me in the church I go to, where, I mean, it's the best of the area, where it's a Mennonite church, and they have a prayer meeting immediately after the preaching, and the prayer meeting is invariably about people who are ill. Every ailment under the sun. And I'm all for praying for people who are sick, but that's all they ever pray about.
Yeah.
And Sunday there, and Sunday my wife and I are listening as usual, and you hear all these stories about uncle this and auntie that, and my cousin and my friend, and he's got an aunt and aunt and aunt, and then somebody put their hand up, yeah, the dog. And my wife and I just burst out laughing. I couldn't help it. My daughter gave me a nudge, as if to say, "Shh, be quiet." But there wasn't one, and I mean this, there wasn't one single word about the gospel, not one prayer for anything spiritual. My
Yeah,
wife
strange.
brought it up to the guy. I've spoken to him about his preaching. And there's only so much you can say, and I don't want to be seen to be a troublemaker.
Right.
They've got their way, and I won't answer to God for it. The pastor will. So, but it's dreadful, absolutely dreadful, that prayer meeting, and the preaching can sometimes, it reflects the same mixed up idea. And then that pastor is not a man who will ever evangelize. He's too caught up with this world.
Right. So how can you pray according to Timothy about kings or authorities or rulers if you're not going out there and talking to people or men from every nation? You know what I mean? How can you direct your prayers if you're not doing it?
Yeah. It's one thing to teach about it, but then what's the point of teaching that if you yourself are not willing to witness to a king, as you say, or somebody else? What's the point of any of that?
Right. And I'm not saying you have to be perfect or out there every day, but there should be some degree of accountability when it comes to that, I would imagine.
Yes, but isn't this a symptom of our evangelical times, that the big names, the crowd gatherers, these guys are great for your conferences, for writing your books, but like with the whole COVID thing, they all went missing. They must have gone into the Bermuda Triangle at the same time. I don't know where these guys were. Where were all these guys? All these big names.
I don't get
until then they only appeared on the scene until the small church pastors, the nobodies had stood up and actually said something about actually made a stand to be faithful and to actually.
And the funny thing was, Christopher, those big guys lost a lot of people in their churches, and they went to the little churches. Our church grew. It grew on Staten Island because, when our church, it was probably one of the first churches to open back up in the very beginning when nobody knew what was happening. But man, people just started coming and coming and coming. And me and my wife, we wouldn't wear a mask, and we didn't want to be difficult. We were trying our best to be accommodating to everyone. If you ask me to go here or go downstairs, that's fine. But we kind of had a feeling, even from the beginning, everything was just like, are you kidding me? There's something seriously wrong with this. And after everything was said and done, they just kind of like looked at us like, we didn't have to go through all that. We didn't have to, we didn't have to have all the sanitation stuff over here and boxes of masks over there. When we found out they didn't do anything, but the church grew. The church grew when it opened up, and it was such a blessing to see so many people who were like, "This is Christ's church." Is it? How are they going to tell us? How are those other leaders going to shut down? They're going to give away Christ's church? Then this doesn't make any sense. And common sense stuff. Like I was thinking to myself, like, okay, if you got a very old congregation, I understand the worry then. But you can also maybe tell the older folks to go in a different area of the church, or at least stay home, and you can visit them. You know, have the people who are in their conscience feel strong enough to not worry about this. Keep coming, keep preaching, keep teaching, and there were those little churches, like Christopher was saying, that did that, and I think that's such a blessing.
Amen.
Hey, Curtis.
Yeah.
There's something wrong with your speaker. You sound like you're in a fishbowl for some reason. I don't know what happened.
Okay, is it still broken?
Yeah, it still sounds like you're in an aquarium. I don't know why.
Let me see here.
Maybe if you. Uh-oh.
I turned off my Wi-Fi and went on.
Okay, there you. Yeah, you sound better now.
Oh, that's good. Yeah.
It must have been the internet connection.
Yeah.
All right, thank you.
Yeah. 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 That's I'm a big believer in the guys who are doing all the leading, all the big names. I'd like to see them mixing more with the lesser mortals. But I think, in my own view, this is my own view, they're too busy pursuing their own ministries. They're too busy doing whatever they think is right, and they're just not set up to. They're not set up to actually help the ordinary churches and the ordinary folks.
Right.
I'm
very concerned about it. I'm seeing it everywhere.
Well, Angus, don't you know that they help the ordinary churches by publishing books and publishing their sermons online?
Well, there's that. I mean, there is that, to be fair. But again, I come back to the New Testament example. Christianity was an in-motion religion. I mean, Jesus taught them on the move, on the hoof. The book of Acts, they're on the go, on the go, on the go. But what I'm seeing is a sedentary religion that's rooted in a building.
Yeah.
And a pastor in a chair.
Right.
And a partridge in a pear tree.
It's not life on life.
Yeah, I don't get it. I don't like, obviously, the Mormons and the Jehovah's Witnesses, but they've got something right. They're going out there in the streets.
Right. They've got zeal without knowledge, but we just need to give these guys with knowledge some zeal.
Angus, you're really convicting me, because you're talking about going out on the street all these times, and one of my brothers that I met today at Bible study, he said that he goes out on the street on a regular basis, and I've had a desire for a long time to go out on the street, but I've never actually done it.
well, hang on. But by that, I'm using a phrase to mean go out there and witness.
Oh, okay.
Whether it's in your workplace or on the street. And yeah, literally to your neighbor, going to the store and bumping into people and sharing the gospel.
Right.
But I don't, for years now, for decades, it's rare to hear a story of an elder witnessing in that scenario. And I don't know how what you've experienced, but that has been my experience. I'm finding that the modern elder pastor is very competent in terms of his counseling skills. He's great at bringing a couple who's under stress back together again and stuff like that.
Mm-hmm.
But it reminds me an awful lot of a professional counselor / speaker / executive and all down the line. And these guys are no doubt eminently skilled in certain areas, but I keep asking myself, okay, so was the Apostle Paul. So was Jesus, so was Peter, and they're always on the move and they're always preaching and they're going out. Whereas the model we have is you come to us. And that, I don't know, I don't see that. I have a real tough time with that. Because there were assemblies in the New Testament and they were established doesn't mean that they kind of then built a wall around themselves and say, okay, you come to us. They went out. But the bell ringing model of a church, you ring the bell and everybody comes to you, that might have worked whenever. It doesn't work now. But I think we've got bell ringing evangelicalism. That's part of the problem with the teaching.
Bell ringing evangelicalism. I'm writing that down.
I think is too is that the church is on some level bound to the state via tax exemption. So with the tax exemption, you get these massive ivory towers or these big ministries because of that. They really, and then you have a lot of false churches really taking advantage of that tax exemption. But whatever the case may be, I forget who actually instituted that. One of these older presidents, I think he instituted the 501c3 to make sure that we didn't, the church didn't promote particular candidates for the presidency or something like that. If I'm wrong, somebody correct me. But now the church is bound, its mouth shut, on touching on certain political categories or whatever it may be from the pulpit. And I don't think that's a good New Testament first century model.
It can get scary.
Look at the state. What happened during COVID? If the state is telling us to shut down, or at least in Canada, you got to shut down. We're closing your church. They got no choice. What are they going to do? You know, they got skin in the game when it comes to taxes.
Wow.
Yeah, taxes aren't as important as the spiritual health of the believers, or the tax exemption.
That's where I think that house church model really shines, because now people they've taken all the shackles off. The problem with the house church model is that I think in our contemporary time, nobody's used to it. Nobody knows how to run it. You know, there's a lot of qualified people available. And for me, like, even if I was to look for a house church in my area, how do I find it? Like, it's not like in the yellow pages.
You have to knock on doors and ask you, are you a believer in the, are you, I guess, I don't know. I actually, for about a year, I was attending a house church. Only very recently did I stop attending it. And I actually, when I talked to Angus on the phone, I told him I liked many aspects of it, but unfortunately the main leader, the husband of the husband of the head of the household, he was not qualified to be a leader.
That's those churches.
I mean, he didn't even think that he was qualified to teach the Bible. We would watch Bible teaching on the internet.
Yeah.
Instead of him actually teaching us.
I think you'll find a lot of that most likely, because guys who don't qualify in, let's just say, the professional church, they'll go off on their own little island and do their own thing. I'm not saying people should have to think they qualify for some professional organization, but they should at least know something, and at least fit the Timothy and Titus standard.
Right.
But you'll find probably a lot of house churches with these renegade dudes, you know, who just, you know, that's the problem.
Yeah. Yeah, they haven't. The problem is elders are not training new elders. That's part of the problem. there with the professionalism, you have someone who goes to a school, they get a degree, then they apply to the job, and then they have the interview, and they have all that process. In fact, the church I'm now attending, they recently hired. Yeah, I don't know if they hired, they at least appointed him to a specific position. Like he was in an interim period or a probationary period, and now they voted him him in. And I tried one Sunday. I attempted to stay after the main service for his where he was going to give his testimony and all that stuff. I could not bear to do it because I couldn't stand the fact that he's just a guy applying for a job. He's not actually a part of this church family. They don't know him. He has to actually tell them who he is, and he's coming from the outside in.
Right.
I can't take that anymore.
It's not like he was among them for a long period of
Right.
time. Got to know him, seen his character, and then voted him
Right.
Yeah, it's the soccer transfer market thing. You move from Barcelona to play for Manchester United,
Right.
and that's what it is. You don't need to, in that system, you don't need to know anyone. You just need to have a name, a recommendation, and off you go.
Yeah.
As long as you can preach and you've got a good testimony from the other place, they'll just, as you say, hire you.
Yeah.
They don't grow them in their own churches.
Right.
That idea that's long gone.
That's really, it needs to come back.
Oh, big time.
We need to try to restore it.
Because
somehow.
you mentioned that accompanying that professional model is the fact that you have to go to a seminary, and then you've got the debt that you incur. And the church that sends you there says, yeah, we're sending you there because you're qualified to be in the gospel, but then they send you there, you're in debt, and by the time you come out, the church that sent you there saying, right, okay, nice, great, off you go now. That's it, you're left on your own. And it really is just like in a job market, you're on your own. There's no supporting infrastructure, there's nothing. It's just you, as we say in Scotland, on your Todd, on your own, and you just do your thing. And maybe you've got connections. Maybe you've got a name because your father was a preacher or so, and you'll get in the side door, or you'll get to, but if you're a nobody, you could literally, and I've seen this many times, you could be up to your eyeballs in debt and never get into a church to be a pastor or preacher or however you want to call it. I've seen it so many times. Oh, good grief.
Well, gentlemen, I actually have to get going a little bit early tonight. I got stuff going on here at the house, so
Okay.
I guess I'll let you guys talk. And
thank you, brother.
Well, thanks for coming. It was good talking to you.
I will pray about the things you mentioned, Curtis, and your job and stuff like that. But I think we can all pray for true eldership, true leadership to be raised up, true churches.
Absolutely.
And get away from this professional model, right?
Now,
right.
I'm praying for Phil. And what was the, I think you mentioned the young lady? Or no?
You're talking about Angus? Angus
Yeah.
mentioned his coworker, Michelle.
Michelle, yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Michelle. All right, great.
I witness to her every day, all the time.
Okay. All right, gentlemen.
Sure. All right, brother.
Take care.
Well, God bless.
Take care.
Where is he? You gonna actually leave us, Curtis?
I'm trying.
We
This
won't
technology.
hold it against you.
There we